So it's a beautiful afternoon in Vancouver. The sun is out, I'm on a windy road, and I've got an Audi S4 at my disposal. Let me take you for a ride. So what can I say right away about this S4? Well, the interior is absolutely beautiful. It's so beautifully laid out and immaculately put together. This is the kind of Audi interior experience that we all crave and love. It's very understated on the outside, very subtle, and unless you're a car guy, you probably wouldn't notice that you've got a 333 horsepower sports sedan staring at you. I think the phrase that comes to mind is iron fist in a velvet glove. Like all European high-end cars used to be, this car is very firm. Not jarring, but very firm, and it's a feeling I really like, conveying a lot of road feel. I think modern cars typically have gotten a little too soft, but this S4 isn't shy about giving a firm ride. It gives you a very good sense of connection with the road and a lot of confidence. Let's talk about the engine. Outside, on the side of the car, it does say it's a V6T. You will be forgiven if you think that's a V6 turbo, but actually it is a V6 supercharged, 3-liter direct injection, about 333 horsepower, about 325 foot-pounds of torque. And you would also be forgiven if you initially think it's a bit bland. But once you do put your foot down, especially at low revs, you are met with a tremendous mountain of torque. An obscene amount of torque. Do you see how we just exited out that corner? The Quattro Oreo drives really helps in this regard, put the power down with so little drama and so much confidence. This is a heroic little engine. And as you build its power and torque up, it does sound pretty good too. Not quite the bland V6 that you thought it was. It's not something you have to rev out, nor can you. It only goes up to about 6,000 RPM. But that amount of power and torque really comes in down low. There's a huge spread of it, and it starts very early. It's kind of the opposite of a naturally aspirated engine. In a naturally aspirated engine like in my GT3, all the fireworks are up top, and you really have to work at it and get the revs up before you get that satisfying thrust. In this S4, all that power is down low. So what you sacrifice up top, you get it all back with instantaneous torque. And arguably, this is a much better way to drive a road car. On a road, you're not really going to be keeping the engine on the boil all the time. You want that instant acceleration for those on-ramps and off-ramps, and this is the kind of engine that gives it to you. It's very well suited to the character of this S4. The last S4 I drove was a B7 generation wagon, a manual V8. That was a great car. I loved the manual transmission, the crackle and pop of the V8, and the charisma that it had. But of course, one of the problems with the older, bigger engine S4s is that the front end feels very heavy. You don't get that sense of lightness and dartiness that you do in this new car. It's very much improved. The old cars always felt like you were herding around a giant engine lump at the very front, on top of and in front of the front axle. I don't know where exactly the engine is placed here, but it definitely does not feel as nose heavy as the old car. There's a lot more liveliness in the steering. There's a lot more liveliness in the cornering response. Speaking of that steering, it is just fantastic. It's beautifully judged and weighted like all Audis are, but there's actually some genuine mechanical feel despite the fact that it's electric steering and not hydraulic. I know we've gone on and on about the loss of feel and feedback, and it's true, we have lost a lot of feel and feedback, but previously, you gotta remember, Audis weren't really known for their hydraulic steering feel either. So moving to electric wasn't really a big deal. You still get just as much as you had before, and I think as an enthusiast car, it's still plenty good enough for me. Okay, so how's the corner experience? We're coming upon a tight left-hand corner here. Gonna drop down to second gear, tip it in. It does feel like a bit tall and a bit heavy, but it does grip very well. Good bit of mechanical feel, and of course we're using all of that torque as we exit the corner. Okay, very satisfying. This is a sports sedan. There's just so much composure in the S4 chassis, and it's so forgiving and so faithful to your chosen line. If you go in a little hot, it does understeer a little, and mashing on the throttle isn't going to really rotate the rear end and give you that cornering attitude you might crave in a rear drive M3 or a Porsche GT3. But for the average enthusiast, it is so confidence inspiring and so easy to exploit. Okay, I want to talk a bit about the gearbox. This is a CSG S-Tronic. It's a dual clutch automated manual, just like you would find in the Porsche PDK or BMW MDCT. I am shifting in a dynamic mode right now, which is the most aggressive for the Audi. It is very good, but on the upshifts, it does slur a little, and on the downshifts, it does take a little longer than expected, and it doesn't quite engage the clutch quite as quickly as I normally would hope. Driven in isolation, you would never think twice about it, but if you drive it back to back with a DCT or a PEK at their maximum attack, I think you would notice a difference. It's just almost as good, but not quite. Thankfully, Audi does offer a fully traditional manual transmission, a 6-speed, 3-pedal manual, and that's my transmission of choice. And if I were to spec on an S4, that's the one I would definitely get. So where do I think this car fits into the grand scheme of things? Well, the most obvious comparison is, of course, to the current M3 and M4, the turbocharged inline 6-cylinder rear drive M tractors from BMW. Of course, unlike the M3 and M4, the S4 isn't quite as aggressive. It's a few notches down in terms of driving enthusiast appeal, especially if you're a very aggressive or a track day driver. However, and this is a big one, the S4 I think is more exploitable on a day-to-day basis. It's got quattro all-wheel drive, so you're enjoying it 365 days a year. The engine is much more exploitable. It's got so much torque down low. It's got a very good, very feelsome, firm chassis. The steering is light and fluid, and everything about this car just screams quality. It doesn't quite have the ultimate performance, I don't think, compared to an M3 and M4, but it's not quite that price point either. In Canada, this is about $55,000 starting. That puts you right within range of the 335i, 335i Sports, X-Drives, that kind of car. So you're getting nearly M3 and M4 performance, and you get the special S badge that's kind of the equivalent, and you pay a little less for it. I mean, the technology is probably half to one generation behind, but I don't think from the driving experience you're really losing out a whole lot. It's a great alternative choice. If you're a really hardcore driver, you like track days, probably the M3 and M4, spend a little bit of extra money. But I think as an everyday sports sedan, comfort, image, understated styling, beautiful traction, poise, and a car that is really easy to exploit for the average driver that covers for you, I think this one is it. Beautiful car. I am really enjoying this S4.